Hello, Amy Elizabeth here, somatic and intuitive healer, and I want to just touch in on what is happening today, the things that have led up to it, and why this weekend has potential revolutionary and explosive capacity. And it may be metaphysically explosive, it could be explosive on this 3D piece. So let's just dive right in. One of the things, the major thing that's happening today, that for those of you that follow my write-ups saw, that pinged for me, is that Mercury is squaring the North Node and the South Node. Now, why that matters is they're called the nodes of fate. It's the head and the tail of the dragon. And this has to do with our past and our future. And Mercury, as the messenger, is bringing the fire to this. Between Mercury and the nodes, they're all in fixed signs. So there is this potential energy around I don't want to change. I don't want to do anything different because I'm comfortable here. And that's very South Node. When we close the doors and say, well, I don't want to explore that. I don't want to look at that. And before we dive any deeper into this Mercury square the nodes, I just want to touch on earlier this week, Mercury squared off with Mars, angry words. And then Chiron and Venus trine. There was space there for apologies and reconciliations, followed by Mercury squaring with Uranus. What are the messages that we're getting around how we need to change that we are doubling down and refusing to listen to? And now we are at this Mercury squaring the nodes. So a T-square is a choice point. And Mercury is like this dot here, right? Mercury is going to be my elbow. And the nodes, one of them is my fingertips and one of them is this elbow. And there's this balance point that happens where we're getting messages around what we need to go toward. And what we need to go toward is most often the places that we're uncomfortable. And we're uncomfortable because they're unfamiliar, because we don't know them. And that challenges us. Our little monkey minds like to stay comfortable. We like to be in what we know and what we see has achieved, what we have achieved. And it can be hard to step out of that. That's our sharp-shinned hawk up there. There's a whole nest of them. They're fledglings and they're very busy and they're very noisy. So this is about fate and destiny. And I'm going to touch into this more as we move into tomorrow's aspects, because tomorrow's aspects have a level of potency to them that really provide us with some opportunities to make some big changes in our lives if we're able to shake off the calcification of the things we hold tightly to. The things that we're like, well, I don't understand that, so I'm just going to double down and not do it, rather than getting curious. Mercury is bringing in messages of what transformation could look like. So Mercury is in fire. Mercury is in that sign of that heart. And sometimes we get bogged down in the idea of one portion of our energy. We get bogged down in our sun sign or our moon sign or our rising. And while all of those are lovely indicators and you can learn a lot from them, to be whole, you have to look at the whole of your chart is really what needs to be looked at to be whole, to be complete. So Mercury is bringing in the messages and showing us, hey, here is the South Node. Here is where you're comfortable. Here is what feels good. Here is what you clearly want to be in. And is that really serving you? Does it work? Maybe it's been working so far. Is it going to continue to work? Or maybe it's been working, but it's not getting you to where you want to be, which is the North Node. So this is fate, the South Node piece. This, I'm just going to double down and stay here because it's what's comfortable. And it's what I know, and it's what I do. And then we've got the North Node piece. And the North Node piece is moving towards what is unknown, and it can be scary. I am not denying at all that moving towards that North Node piece can be scary. And there's nothing wrong with it being a little scary. I want you to call in that energy of Leo season and the courage that is Leo season, and get really curious and see about moving toward that which makes you uncomfortable, moving towards doing things in a different way, seeing in a different way, showing up in a different way, rather than continually doubling down and being like, no, this is just where I'm at, and that's the end of the discussion. Because this whole couple weeks, Uranus has been in aspect, in orb. It's been in orb to the nodes. The conjunction is the aspect, and the conjunction goes exact tomorrow on July 30th. And what this is Uranus is going to conjunct the North Node in Taurus. Now, yes, Uranus is lightning fast change, but lightning is also the build up and release of tensions. Uranus is genius. Uranus is rebellion and revolution and doing things differently. Hi, B. I'm allergic to you. I need you to go away. Thank you. So come back here. Leave the bee alone. This can be the release of those tensions. And all of it happening in Taurus, which is a fixed sign for those that have major placements and fixed sign energies. They don't like to change. They need wounds poked at. They need things brought to the light rather than just being happily patted and told, well, we're just going to ignore that because you're uncomfortable. No, this is Taurus, just like it's Leo and Aquarius and Scorpio, and they can be slow to change, painfully slow to change. They are oftentimes the last people to change, and they're oftentimes the last to see. If those are energies you identify, really check in and really ask people you trust, like, am I fluid? Am I flexible? Am I innovative? Or do I maybe get a little stuck in my ways and I could do better with my curiosity? So the North Node and Uranus conjunct about every 15 years. So that piece isn't necessarily that rare. So the last time the North Node and Uranus came together was in March of 2007, specifically March 31st, and they came together in Pisces. So if you are a journaler, or if maybe you're aware of what was going on in your life in March, and say like the last half of March to the first half of April, is when they would have been in an orb and coming together. They would have been dancing with each other at that point. Get curious, what was going on for you in 2007, end of March, beginning of April, because they came together in Pisces. And because they come together every 15 years, they move through all of the signs, right? A little bit at a time. The last time that the North Node and Uranus met in Taurus was 1855. On March 16th was the exact conjunction. So some things that happened in that year that can be considered revolutionary, boots on the ground, because remember, Taurus is an earth sign. Boots on the ground, revolution and changes. Alexander Romanov became the Tsar of Russia in 1855. The first railroad train ever to cross a suspension bridge in the United States happened that year. Now, while that may seem like a random thing, think back to 1855. Think about the innovation that was suspension bridges. And now think about the innovation of putting the weight of a train on a suspension bridge. This is a boots on the ground Uranus revolution. This is something that is so different and something that is so moving us forward through genius that I just think it's a beautiful sign of this 1855 Uranus and Taurus, North Node in Taurus conjunction. And the other thing I want to bring up, because we can have repeats of stuff if we don't do it well the first time, if we don't actually deal with all the pieces, is that the Nebraska-Kansas Act was in process. And what was being voted on was whether or not Kansas would enter the United States as a slave territory or a free territory. So it was, there's this thread of civil rights issues here also. Like, what is happening? Because we are Earth. Our bodies are Earth. And for us to really be free and love the Earth, we have to love one another, and we have to treat one another as equals. And so one of the things that was up for debate in 1855 was whether or not they would be entering as a free state or a slave state. And this voting process is notorious for the level of voter fraud and intimidation that was taking place at the polls, because we don't see that here in the U.S. at all. So there's those pieces. And now with this conjunction that's taking place tomorrow, inviting us in to moving more deeply towards what can be, what we could be inviting in, Mars is going to be hanging out. Because Mars and Kali conjunct at 17 degrees of Taurus. Well, Uranus and the North Node are at 18 degrees of Taurus. All of this is also in an orb square with Mercury. So what are the messages? But Uranus is asking us to access our genius to move towards something new, something we're not familiar with. And Mars and Kali are there with Kali as the ego destroyer, cutting away the things that we haul around that make us comfortable, but don't add to our genius, don't up our game, don't move us toward our North Node, our destiny. Like, that's the thing about North Node, it's destiny. And destiny is not comfortable. Destiny pushes our edges. Destiny asks us to step out of what we know and move into something else. And for each of us, having individual natal North Nodes, it's different. Collectively, however, this North Node is asking us to change things in our physical life, change the way we live, to claim personal responsibility. There is that Sun and Mercury and Venus all in Leo, asking us to claim personal responsibility for the choices that we're making and how the choices that we make affect the whole. Because this 3D does matter. And how we're showing up here matters, especially for people, you know, if you're a human being with a 6th house North Node or a 8th house North Node, or an 11th house North Node, 2nd house North Node also. If you have a North Node in any of those houses, you're being asked to be here now. Those are the houses that are really about this material realm and the gifts that you're being called to bring in, the innovations and the changes, and how you move in a place of revelation. So, you know, Mars and Kali are there, and it's this ignition and the passion to offload what doesn't work, like to upgrade and leave behind the wounding and the pain, and be like, you know what, I can choose to haul this around, or I can choose to set it down and move toward something else. And the next thing I want to bring in is the length of time and the bigness of the cycle of a North Node, Mars, Uranus conjunction. The last time those three came together was in 1458 during the volcanic winter, it was called. Because that sounds fun, right? And that happened in Leo. So the last time these three came together was again in 1458 in Leo, in a fire sign, another fixed sign. And what happened with the volcanic winter is there were food shortages and kind of upheaval. There was a volcano that erupted in 1453 that shifted everybody's ability to grow food. So by 1458, 5 years later, they were experiencing massive food shortages and a lot of struggle. And they had to move with a level of innovation. So now when is the last time that the North Node, Uranus and Mars came together in Taurus? Because that's what we're experiencing, is a Taurian conjunction. And the last time they came together was 324 BC. A year that was called the year of the dictatorship of Cursor. Because that sounds fun, right? So what was going on? Alexander the Great was trying to work to assimilate Persia into his empire. And the way he decided he was going to choose to do that was by forcing Persian women and girls to marry his soldiers, his generals, his cabinet, what we would call cabinet members, his peers. He was busy forcing Persian women to marry, to try to assimilate them into his empire. Because we don't experience anything like that at all here, where women don't have a right to make their own choices. So it is a big weekend. And these energies, we've been in them. We've been spinning in them because the North Node and Uranus have been in orb. And we're going to kind of continue to feel this and watch how it plays out. Now, this could be big, huge metaphysical explosions. Like you could experience some massive healings this weekend. Some excavation of deep wounds that you're like, oh, I don't need to take that forward with me. I can set that down. We could also be seeing explosions of information. We could be seeing literal explosions because you know, at this point, I don't count anything out. So it's just going to be a big weekend, and you can certainly decide you're going to hide in your house and not deal with it. But like I said, Uranus is the build-up, the release of built-up tensions. And when we are repressing things, and when we are ignoring things, and when we are playing blind to things, that creates tension. So this is a big weekend of potentially explosive release of those tensions. Just being aware and being really conscientious that you are moving with heart. Okay? Tapping in to the earth, tapping into this feminine energy of Great Mother who really teaches us about self-love. And then the final thing that's going to happen, because once I got this done, I will see you again on Monday, is that the sun in Leo is going to trine freshly retrograded Jupiter. Now, Jupiter has been hanging out at 8 degrees for quite some time, because we worked with Jupiter in Women's Circle in June. And so Jupiter has been drilling down at 8 degrees. And Jupiter is about expansion and making things bigger anyway. And when these big outer planets are hanging out at a degree, they're really asking us to move into it. So I'm going to invite you to look at, if you have your chart, if you know your chart, look at what goes on at 8 degrees in any of the signs. Look at what's happening in 8 degrees of Leo or 8 degrees of Aries. And this is the illumination of the places you overindulge. It's the illumination of the places you could expand into more. Because Jupiter brings grace and he brings expansion. So just, and it's a fire trine. We are being asked to transform, and transform on a level where it's showing up on a boots in the ground, 3D, real life, day-to-day level. So, drop your questions, your comments, your dedications, your requests down below. I love interacting and hearing from you. And have a great weekend. Don't hide in your house, and really be paying attention to where you're feeling explosive, because that is where you are repressing things. If you are feeling defensive, if you are feeling explosive, if you feel like I'm just going to shut down because I'm mad about what you're saying, those are places you're avoiding things. So sending fierce love to everybody.